and this game is a cooperative dungeon crawler where players are going to be playing through a deck of cards, with each of the decks representing their own story or adventure that you're going to be exploring. Each of these is going to have you exploring one of the various dungeons, with each of those dungeon cards being labeled with a specific number. If you move out a door, it's going to tell you which card goes adjacent to that card for you to move into, but then each of these numbers is also going to correlate to one of the adventure cards, which is going to give you different options and opportunities or battles that players are going to have to contend with. Throughout each one of these stories, players are going to be controlling 4 different characters. There's your warrior, your scout, your mage, and your healer. And at the start of each round, you're going to be deciding the order that you want them to enter a room. The way that you depict this is by ordering them appropriately on your combat board. The next thing you're going to do is explore a new room in the dungeon by moving through one of the available doors and then finding the appropriate card to extend that dungeon, finding the adventure card that matches that number, and then read that adventure card. Adventure card's going to have all sorts of different items, bonuses, decisions, effects, or enemies, and they're going to also change depending on the order that you had your characters enter the room, or they can change depending on the options that you take in that room and the options that you take with each of the individual characters. Anytime you engage in combat, you're going to be moving that over to the combat board, adding the different enemies to that board, and then each lane is going to be acting like its own individual combat, with your character attacking whichever enemies are across from them. Combat's resolved using dice rolling, and you can just roll the enemy's dice along with your character's dice at the same time. The amount of damage done and who that damage was done to is going to be determined by the difference of the dice rolls and whichever character rolled the highest. Of course, you can also spend your luck resource in order to re-roll your dice, and you can also augment your dice rolls with various abilities or effects or cards that you might have acquired throughout the game. And a really neat thing about the combat in this game is that after you resolved each of the individual lanes, that gives you the opportunity to rearrange your characters however you see fit, and you can even put multiple characters in a single lane. And anytime you do that, it's going to be adding a modifier to that dice roll, because essentially you are ganging up against a single character, but the enemies can also do this against you, which you can see in this image here. The game continues like this as you play through the various decks, fighting the different enemies and trying to accomplish all sorts of different objectives. And if the players are able to do that all successfully, then they win the game. And if you want to know more, I do have links to the campaign. You can check it out in the description below.